Hey guys, my name's Scott Bowling, and you're watching Good Company. Today we have a special episode. First of all, we have Rich Ward from Fozzy and Stuck MOJO.
Yeah.
He does the intro and outro to this show, which my son is obsessed with, by the way. Good Company.
Super strong.
Jose Mangin, Sirius XM.
Yeah.
And today we're here to talk about 90s metal. And we each picked out 3 albums, which was very hard. I kind of wanted to go back and forth on, but so
you actually did. You actually
did.
You changed your list up. The original one you sent me.
I did, and I kind of changed it up maybe one more time.
You did?
Yeah.
You cheater.
Yeah, it's taboo.
I worked my list based on what you guys sent it.
Oh, that's not fair.
I had to, man.
That's
You
not
guys
fair.
had covered like. Look.
That's true. That's true.
There was some
Alright,
strong. Like
yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, we can't both all have the same 3 because we could.
Okay.
Because there's some super strong
I agree.
options.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so first, I guess I'll go first. Pantera, Far Beyond Driven. Boom. So I love this album. I love this album. When I was 14 years old, I saw the album and I was like, that is a great looking album cover. Wasn't the original one. I actually like this one better than the original one. The original one's cool. It's just hard to look at.
With the girl getting rammed with the drill.
Yeah.
I mean,
Parents may not let me brought that one home, but they let me bring this one home.
Parents just don't understand, Scott.
Yeah, DJ Jeff, nice. The first song I remember when I listened to it, "Strength Beyond Strength." I was like, "This is amazing." Becoming, 5 Minutes Alone, I'm Broken. Just kind of reading off the back here. Shedding Skin. This is just a classic album.
You know, it was the first extreme metal album and the only extreme metal album to come in at number 1 on the Billboard Top 200.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks it's vulgar, but it's this one.
No, Far Beyond Driven was the first extreme metal album to hit number 1 on the Billboard.
Great.
And how heavy that album is to have that.
It changed me.
Did you remember when you heard it?
Oh, dude, Pantera is my absolute favorite band, and of course I remember everything. I remember going to see this tour when they were on tour with Sepultura and Prong, and they stopped at Compton Terrace outside of Phoenix Indian Reservation, and that's when I first met Dimebag, Vinny, and Rex. I traded some weed for a backstage pass, 2 backstage passes.
It's a solid pro move.
Dude, it's a
pro move.
I had extra, and that's when I first met them. And in my house, right now, in my house, I have the poster, the tour poster. It's this cover. He took it off. Dime took it off the wall, and he signed it. And everybody except Phil. I didn't see Phil. And I have that framed. It's so ripped up and chewed up and just like through the years of folding it, moving, bending it, it looks all crazy, but it's framed, and I have the backstage pass that I traded weed for. This album is revolutionary, man.
Yeah. Dude,
We were on tour with Stuck MOJO in a 1977 Dodge van when that album came out, because I remember we were in Chicago and we were so excited for the release of that. So we went to the music store the day it came out, because we were like, that album changed my life. I remember the first time that I heard Pantera was right at the end of the Cowboys from Hell era, and then I got obviously Vulgar Display of Power. And I remember taking it over to Morgan Rose's house, because we weren't best friends, but we were like comrades in the Atlanta music scene. I remember him at his little jam band house and us listening to it on cassette, because I made a cassette copy from the CD, and just the 2 of us like losing our minds. And that album, I remember sitting in a hotel outside of Chicago, and all of us huddled around a boombox and listening to that album and just thinking, well, we all suck. Yeah. Because they were able to do that. They're one of the few bands that they didn't have the kind of sophomore blues. They were able to continue to make better and better records, whatever better means. You know what I mean? Like, this was definite an evolution. It was heavier, and Phil was, you could tell he was starting to experiment more with just aggressive vocal styles. And
who produced that album? I'm trying to remember his name.
Terry Date,
Terry
right?
Date, yes.
Date,
So he did Vulgar and that one too.
He did all the great records back then. I mean,
Soundgarden and everything.
God, which was on my list. I had Bad Motor Finger was in my queue, because it did so much for so many bands, and it was like the only quote unquote metal record for me that Soundgarden made, and I list that record like crazy. Okay, sorry.
All right, so next will be
Oh,
Jose.
it's me. Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
it's your
cool.
turn.
I picked this 90s metal album from Dave Mustaine. What do you mean you picked Rust in Peace, huh? What do you mean? What do you mean? Of course. What do you mean, Dave? This album right here is one of my favorite albums ever in life. And all the songs, just Dave Mustaine. I worship the dude. He's a friend. One of these things where idol becomes a friend. But this album, I remember seeing Holy Wars, the Punishment Due video at Headbangers Ball, and just
amazing.
What? And how long it was, and how just perfect. And that even cool little Spanish little interlude.
What's his name? Marty Friedman? Is that Marty?
Yeah, Marty Friedman, man. But this album.
And that was the classic lineup.
This is, for me, everything. This was at a time in my life where it was just God. It was godlike. And so important to me as a thrasher. And to this day, I mean, all these songs, we play them in heavy rotation on Liquid Metal. I mean, this is the most played Megadeth album for me on the station, hands down.
And this was like definitely early 90s, right? This
Yeah,
before,
1990.
Like, yeah, this is before everything grunge and all that.
1990, man. And this right here, this set off the whole decade. And to this day, it's still like the blueprint. Killer. What do you mean, Jose? So yeah, this is mine album. This is mine.
Rich, do you guys ever play with Megadeth at all?
Yes, but just festivals. Never toured with
Festivals.
them. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, Jericho, like you, Jericho's friends with Dave.
Yeah.
I have a great Dave story. So we were doing the Golden Gods, the carpet walk,
Yes.
which you have been hosting.
Yes.
And Jericho and I were obviously walking the line, and as you do, and then there's a bunch of journalists, they ask you questions, you walk down, you take some photos, blah, blah, blah. You see some other dudes in other bands, take photos. And then Dave comes up, and Jericho and I are taking photos, and Dave looks at me, and he and Chris just exchanged pleasantries. And then Dave looks at me and he goes, "Scram." And I remember I was like, and then Jericho was like, no. Because I remember how I couldn't process it. You know when you're so confused, you feel super disrespected, but then I know he was kidding, but I don't know you well enough to know where the level of disrespect and kidding was. Yeah, but then Jericho, later he's like, "Dude, you just have to understand Dave."
Yeah.
All right.
He is.
Tell me how nice he is. Keep telling me, man.
He's a character, and it was tough to break through. For me, it took a long time. Super honest, I put in my work to have this relationship be tight. I'm hosting the Mega Cruise. I hosted the Megadeth boot camp. He's just a personal friend, but it took a lot of work. And he would tell me things. I would be doing interviews, and I'd say something. He'd be like, "That's stupid." Okay, I mean, and I would be thrown off. I was like, oh, fuck.
It's so hard, isn't it, when you're doing that, especially people you look up to, you don't quite know how to. I have had a couple of awkward things also with Scott Ian, who's another bro, great guy. But it's when you have these guys, and you don't know them.
It's hard.
And it is, and you're trying to be enough of a bro to cut him that little thing because you're I don't know him, but I know him because I have all the records, right? So you've already elevated them to Mount Rushmore of riffage. So it's tough, man. But
because I start acting weird around these dudes too. I start getting all weird.
Well, who wouldn't?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. But he accepted me now, and he loves me now. So so it is cool. But so I am very close. But this album, and on the 20th anniversary of this album, I drove to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I brought tacos for Dave and the guys, and it was my first time making tacos for a band and delivering food to one of my idols, and I later on became kind of known for that. I do that a lot.
Dude.
But that was my first time, and it was 4.5 hour old tacos, and then he ate them, and then he was like,
got mud butt.
no, he was like, They're songy. And I was like, oh, Dave, man, but they're 4.5 hours old, man. And then he was like, oh, well, okay, you know. So I was like, damn. But this is rest in peace, man, forever. You know, this can even be my, maybe a desert island album.
Wow.
You know, something that I can just kind of have forever, you know.
Great choice, man. All right, so I'll take this one. Rich next.
Why did you take his album? He said it's a desert island, man. Come on, man.
I'm on the island. Damn, Scott.
This was a difficult one for me to do because there's so many options, but I had to do it for a lot of reasons, but I went with the Metallica Black album. And the reason that I went with the Black record is that it was literally a steamroller that kicked open the door for all of us metal kids into mainstream. Because up until this point, I mean, we had Headbangers Ball, we had specialty shows, we had, you had bands that were selling out arenas, but this was the first one where you had a band that went 5 singles deep, who were not on Headbangers Ball, but were like they had multiple videos on MTV being played, and they were changing the culture. I mean, they were as important as Madonna was at this point in time. And the other part about it too is, I'll just kind of speak for, so my criteria comes down to, was there a predecessor? I don't think there was a predecessor to this record. I can't think of an album that this sounds derivative of. In other words, you could say that it has sprinkles and sprinkles, but this was kind of the flag on the moon for what this was. It was Bob Rock taking this super aggressive band that wrote really killer tight riffs and helped them kind of realize their goal of doing what Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue had done, which is meeting a bigger audience. And whether that was their goal or not, I don't know. I can't get inside their head. But the other thing for me too was that because I was at that point really early in the infancy of Stuck Mojo, every band on the planet then had to rethink how they made records because this album sounded so much better than every other album. Because all of a sudden heavy metal albums had extended low end range. So before a lot of these kinds of records that we could all go through and talk about, especially from the 80s, the bass was an instrument, but the extended range of that instrument wasn't really represented. It didn't have that big low-end power. And this was the first time that, I read where Bob Rock was taking drum samples of Lars's kick drum and detuning it so that it sounded lower in pitch. And so then became the space race for every band was trying to chase how to get this drum sound, how to make these big, massive records that sounded like $1 million albums, which it was. But that's why it kind of met my criteria. Was there a predecessor? Did it influence a whole generation of bands? Yes. And what did it mean to me? Which was that every record that I ever recorded, there was either a CD or a digital copy of it as a reference. So we listened to the mixes of Rising, we listened to the mixes of Judas. Doesn't matter what album it is, always have to have the Black Album. You even take a band like Avenged Sevenfold, they're still they're listening to this album as a point of reference of greatness. So it had to be something that, even though it's a controversial record, it changed everything for metal bands. And even though, again, there was the other side of the coin where you had guys like, Kerry King and the guys in Slayer who weren't going to chase down this rabbit hole, and there were still going to be guys who were going to be true metal. This changed everything.
Huge album.
Huge.
And still
16 million copies.
And still the top-selling metal album every week, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much every single week. Today.
Yes.
Now.
I read it's still selling 5,000 copies a week.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
I love how they documented all that too, man. I just love going back and watching the making of and seeing how vulnerable James was singing in a booth. It just seems, I love it.
It's huge. Massive. Oh my God.
It changed everything, right?
Everything.
My second album is Life of Agony.
Yeah.
So I actually worked in a music store when this came out, and I worked with guys that were a little bit older than me. So they would play this album from start to finish, concept album, and it just changed it. I mean, every song is good from start to finish. I remember seeing these guys with Seven Dust. The first time I saw Seven Dust, they were opening up for them. That was a long time ago. Anyway, that's my choice.
Love.
So,
Strong.
yeah. And
Love
you guys toured with them too. And
Shared a tour bus with them for 8 weeks. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, in Europe.
was this with Keith or was somebody? Didn't they have the guy from Ugly Kid Joe singing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did the tour. It was the album right after this one, which
Ugly.
yes,
Ugly,
that was
yeah.
the one.
And then it was Soul Searching Sun.
Yes.
And then they just put out an album like a year and a half ago as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
They put one out in 03, I think, too.
What was that? Was that 94, 95? What year was that one?
93.
93, okay.
Yeah.
Because we toured with them in 96. And I remember it was a tale of two cities in that band. Dan was playing drums and Joey was playing guitar. And they were the cool, fun party guys. And then you had
Alan, right?
Yeah, and then you had Alan, who was married and who just stayed on the bus and just would read all the time. And then you had Keith, who would take mushrooms and just wax poetry and philosophy all night long, and it was the greatest experience ever.
Cool.
Because he was such an amazing, like he was the first person I ever met that used the word beautiful all the time. Like you're in a metal band, that word's not supposed to be in your vocabulary. It's supposed to be like erased from your hard drive, but he really was an artist in a metal band. Not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so bravo, I think it's a great one.
That's great stuff.
Dude, when they first came out, watching Through and Through on MTV, Headbangers Ball, and just like, what is this voice? Like, what is this? Like, whoa, it stood out. At first, it was kind of like, ew. You know, at first, I was like, what? And then, very quickly, I was like, damn, no, but this is good. And they were ahead of their time. They were the first band to really mix in that type of vocal delivery with their music and then like you said, the concept album with the interludes in between. This is still today a real strong, haunting album and a one you listen to all the way through.
It does, yeah.
It's not just a song here or there.
It's great.
Like you're kind of supposed to listen to the whole thing.
Yes.
So you feel the agony from the dude and the mom.
Everything.
When are you gonna get a job?
Yeah, exactly.
It's nuts.
Yeah,
Nuts.
and even like
And if you listen to Volbeat, there's a lot of Life of Agony in them.
Of course. Life of Agony influenced a lot of
Yes,
bands.
they did,
A lot
yes.
even active rock bands that are like octane bands
Yes.
today. Life of Agony influence, big
Yes.
time. Was
So
my turn?
it's your second.
All
Yeah.
right, cool. My next pick here is from a band that I love talking about all the time, Korn. When the band first came out, I started eating more Korn. That's how much of a fan I was of this
strong.
band. It was that strong. Just
Strong.
my cream corn game was like on fire.
Street Corn Game.
Yeah, oh dude, I saw this place called Kettle Corn. They were selling kettle corn in New York City and they had a K.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I'm gonna give you a tip for the K. You know, dude, everything corn. I even grew corns on my feet.
Oh, that's so strong.
I'd buy like tighter shoes.
Power move.
And I would
Power
just wear them just because I wanted corn on my feet, man. And then I would
Your
eat.
wife loved it too.
Oh,
She's
I
like,
love,
that's
dude,
corn.
no, but and then all the caca with all the corn kettles because that's how much I love corn. This is seriously a life changer for me. I was a fan of hip hop. I played bass, and when I heard a band that had bass like Korn and the feel of Korn and it just felt very raw, and I gravitated towards it instantly. And to this day, they're still one of my favorite bands. And this album, all the songs, I mean, Blind is just massive. And these dudes are now, you know, friends, and I love them very much. And I can't believe, you know, I cried at a Korn show.
Did you?
Yeah. Life is Peachy. I was right up in the front against the barricade. I was in between Fieldy and Jonathan. It was like right when Peachy came out. And I was right in between, and they were playing. They had all the dolls hanging from the stage. And it was just so cool, the lights and the music and the sound, the bass, and I just started crying. You know, I was just like, what the fuck? I'm like crying, dude.
I've cried at concerts.
Yeah,
It's solid.
And I cried at a Korn show. So yeah, man. But this album, this just changed. This influenced a lot of things to come, and they were just, and they're still to this day. I think the cool thing about these guys now, right now, they sound better than they've ever sounded. Right now.
That's what that
Right
was.
now.
I was gonna say, they're the only band that, like, I think got even exponentially better.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this record when it came out, everybody. It was literally like everyone had to get in line behind them because it was that groundbreaking. And I remember it launched Ross Robinson's career, the producer. Everybody wanted that sound because then that became it. It was that kind of mud sound where everything was dark. It sounded like someone put a blanket over your guitar cab. The days of having that Eddie Van Halen or Randy Rhoads kind of bright, guitar riffy sound was done. These guys came out super detuned guitars. I remember the kind of, we used to call it the head, shoulders, knees, and toes guitar thing where they would do the bounce and they started so much. And it was crazy because you remember all of a sudden you see dudes, white dudes in bands with dreads.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't just it was a lifestyle.
Yeah.
People were following
Clothes,
them.
dude. I dress like Jonathan. I still have those same pants, those Adidas pants.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm all about it. I'm all about it. I see the K. If I'm writing something to a fan or something, they have an R in their name, I do the Korn R. Like, that's how fucking nuts I am with Korn. Korn.
So next one, Korn. And Korn's got some coffee now too.
Yeah, Korn coffee. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So we got Rich now.
Heavy.
Yeah.
Super
This album
heavy.
changed my life. It goes into the category of, was there a predecessor? No. This is a second record by Meshuggah, Destroy, Erase, Improve. When I heard this record, I it's like one of those things, like the first time that I heard Ride the Lightning. Like, you can't quite wrap your head around it because it sounds like it came from the future. Like, there was something, and this was during a period of time where it was really in vogue to experiment with industrial stuff. Like, Ministry was hot. There was a lot of these bands who were trying to...
Fear Factory at
Yes,
that time.
Fear Factory was just... I think this was right when Demanufacture... Did Demanufacture come out in 95?
Before.
94? Yeah. Because I remember... Matter of fact, Demanufacture was on my list. It was on my short list because it changed my life too. Dino's right-hand riffing changed my life. The only reason that I went with this one over Demanufacture is because this record had longer lasting ripple effects in that there are still bands today, whereas a band like Fear Factory, what they did, their massive impact on the music scene was a decade, influencing this. There's still bands out there, like, oh my, like, and we're 20 years removed from this, 25 years
Even
almost.
like genre, they describe bands as Meshuggah core or Meshuggah this and Meshuggah that.
We used to call it math metal, but now it's gent. Like, they're the only band that I know of that influenced hardcore bands and influenced like proggy metal bands and also bands like mine that were groove metal bands. And they were the only band that could play an odd meter and still make your head bounce. Like, if a band like Dream Theater was playing an odd meter, I was like amazed, but I didn't want to smack somebody. I just was like, that's really good. But when they went into odd meter and started riffing, it's literally like, it's the music that I want to play in my mind anytime you watch an old Western and everyone in the saloon is fighting. Like, it's the soundtrack of chaos and violence and aggression, and it's beautiful. It's so organized, and these guys are so smart, and it's a beautiful record, and I love everything about it. I love this record so much that for Stuck Mojo's second record, we paid their producer to fly over to America to produce our record because I was so freaked out by this album. And I discovered this album on tour with Life of Agony. We were on tour in Europe, and I remember just listening to it over and over and over again. And
Future Breed Machine, top song. I mean, sickest.
Unbelievable. And still to this day, this album sounds like it came from the future. It sounds like it could have come out today or tomorrow. It's just something unique and special about this band. And even though they're still making amazing records, this to me was another little did they influence lots of bands? Yes. Does it still feel relevant today? You could put it on and it seems like it could have come out. Yes. Love this record.
Nice.
So this is the one I'm kind of switching up on you guys because I changed it.
Here
we go.
Love this album.
Ambrosia.
It's one of my favorite albums of ever. This album basically changed Deftones Around the Fur. Me and my buddy Carl, we literally saw them everywhere we traveled to see Deftones. I worked at a music store again when this came out, and it's just a massive album for me. If a lot of my friends went to Korn, I went to Deftones and Korn. Be Quiet and Drive Far Away, stuff like Around the Fur, and even Max from
Head Up.
Oh, and he got the name Soulfly right from that song.
Soulfly came from that song, yes, for the lyrics. Fly high, Soulfly.
Yeah, but this album did it for me. How do you guys feel about this?
Dude, I worked at the college radio station, so we worked this, we got...
This is perfect, man. I'm sorry.
I know, I just saw it. I was like, yeah.
Dude, I remember getting posters of this and hanging it in my room, and true story, I've actually masturbated to this album cover a couple times.
Devil's jizz.
Yeah, Satan's jizz,
Satan's
bro.
jizz, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But no, I mean, look it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, did you?
No, but
you never beat off to this.
No.
Really?
I will though.
I did to photographs of the guitar player.
Oh, there you go.
Steve is hot.
Stefan, yeah, but this album, dude. I love those Deftones, man. I'm a huge fan of this album. I mean, this one was even heavier than the first one in a lot of ways. No, man, this is the Deftones at one of their finest points ever.
Yeah.
I even kind of a bigger fan of this album than even White Pony.
Me too.
So this album would be one of my...
I love Adrenaline, but this album just seemed to...
This album is my favorite from the Deftones as well.
Who produced that one?
Terry Date, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Terry
Date.
Yeah. It was either Terry Date or Ross Robinson from 1991 to 95. I mean,
see, Ross did like a song with Deftones, but there's politics issues. And
they never did. They never did an album together.
Yeah,
really?
No? They did one song, like he mixed one song, I think.
Yeah.
Well, they voted for different guys, or?
The only thing I've ever heard about them, they just said politics. They said Ross is, he's cool, but politics, that's all.
Yeah, we did a show opening for Deftones in Paris in 1998. With Stuck MOJO, and we played a place. It was a small arena, but crazy crowd, great band. I mean, they were like, along with Limp Bizkit and Korn, they let so many ripples in the water and influenced so many people for sure.
They also made our music sexy.
Yeah. They
made it cool for chicks. I think they did a lot to attract females into our thing and into our world, and I don't know. I do feel like they always brought that sort of vibe to it more so than any other bands.
Certainly, like with White Pony and like Digital.
Yeah, I mean, it's sexy. It was sexy music. Chicks, dudes liked it. It was one of those things that can bring people together. Even people that didn't like metal or whatnot, they would like, oh, but I like the Deftones. I'm like, oh, okay, well. All right, well, come on over here. Let me show you some other stuff too. But Deftones were a band that bridged the gap, I think, too, and made it really cool for females. So it's my turn right now?
Yes, sir.
Oh man, my goodness. Yeah. This is my favorite band in my life, Pantera, and this is my #1 album, Much Too Vulgar Display of Power. This is. This is it. This is just tattooed in my soul. This album, I get emotional, man. This is, now, especially that our boy Vinny isn't even here. This album is massive. This album is all we need. This album really carried heaviness for a long time, on its shoulders. This album really showed how just some regular dressed dudes from Texas can change shit with fucking power. And they did this, man. A New Level we're doing next week at Aftershock, part of the Vinnie Paul tribute. These songs, The Mouth of War, Fucking Hostile, This Love. I love Regular People, By Demons Be Driven. And then of course I love my boy Dimebag with the pot leaf hat I remember getting pulled over at a checkpoint going to LA from San Diego and wearing my Pantera Smoke Weed Across America shirt with a big bright green pot leaf, my long ass hair. And there was the two friends were dudes in the front, white dudes, you know, they had their car and they were like, U.S. citizen, and then he opened my back window, fucking big ass Pantera green logo, pot leaf, U.S. citizen. Can you guys pull over right there to the side? I was like, fuck! But yeah, man, Pantera made me do it. This is my everything. This is my be all end all for
massive
albums.
from like Cowboys from Hell to this, you know.
I mean, this was their 6th album. This is their 6th because they had 4 before.
Yeah.
Phil did, you know, Power Metal number 4, number 5 was Cowboys. This is 6. So I mean, and again, there's like research that shows like when music and when it affects you and how long it affects you the most, like when you're in high school or when you're like a young in teenage years, is when stuff that's gonna hit you and that's what's gonna be lasting forever. This is the album for me. This is what made me really want to just be a messenger of metal, you know, from mosh pits being a part of it, just anything. Like this album.
Yeah, I think that album actually did change metal more than just about any other record. I mean, you could say the Metallica Black record or Rust in Peace, there are a lot of really influential records, but this one worked, it was more of a kind of a blue-collar working class band.
Yes.
They were an everyman, and you just felt like you could be friends with them. There was something about them that was super approachable, and like you said, they were one of the first metal bands that you saw that would, you know, that were wearing camo shorts and a t-shirt, and there was no pomp and circumstance other than, it was, to me, I always related to like Van Halen 1, this record, how it was like, oh, well, erase blackboard and start over again. It was, you know, it really was a game changer, and I know it was for everyone that I knew. That's why, like I said, I went to Morgan's house because I said, have you heard the Pantera record? He's like, no, I never heard of him. I drove to his house because he had to hear it. This is, you know, there's no email back then. It's like, I'm driving to your house. You have to hear this. It's an emergency.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. Pantera.
That's great, man. Great choice.
I have Dimebag's face on my leg. I got CFH on my first tattoo in life was a Cowboys from Hell tattoo. I mean, so this is Pantera's everything.
Yeah, they were the original You're in the Club. Yeah. This predated the kind of BLS that, you know, the Cowboys from Hell insignia was on everybody back then. It was a big deal. So I feel like I've kind of, right after going to Vulgar Display of Power, I feel a little self-indulgent here. And I'll tell you, the honest to God truth is that our old bass player and good friend of mine, Sean Delson, said, if you don't love yourself, ...
Yeah.
Boom.
And let me tell you a little story about this record. The reason I say this is that my criteria, was there a predecessor? Absolutely not. You can always say Rage Against the Machine, this record sounds nothing like Rage Against the Machine. You can always point to other kind of rap core bands. Nothing sounded like this, and it wasn't because of anything other than 4 dudes who don't play alike. You know, it was the influences of Bones, who didn't know anything about rock music, and Corey Lowry, who came from this kind of power rock, kind of almost came out of the kind of hair element, like, because his band was the prettiest band on the planet at the time. It was Still Rain, they were a cover band. And he joined the band, but he was really into Nine Inch Nails and Jane's Addiction. He was like, had all these alternative influences, and our drummer Frank and I were just dumb, you know, metalheads who just loved everything heavy, everything Sepultura, when Arise, and that was another one of mine. Yeah, you know, Chaos AD like changed my life.
Arise is my favorite.
Me too. It's Arise and Chaos AD. So, and those were all of our bands, and we just had this thing that when we came together, it was really unique. And at the time, I was really proud of this record, and I obviously, because anybody who's in a band, even if you're a local band or if you're, you know, Metallica, everyone's proud of what you do, right? Because you know what it took to get there and what it took to make the album. But the thing that I have noticed about this record is that, and I'm not going to name drop because that's against the law. If I had a dime for every guy who's in a huge band that came up to me and said, dude, that record, like the guy, the bass player in the biggest new heavy metal band on the planet drove to see this release party from Kentucky. Like, I get these stories all the time. The Brit bands, like, all the time. And the reason is just like a lot of metal bands, it struck a nerve with them. It did something. It was at that time. If it came out today, I don't think it would have nearly the same impact because, you know, there's so much precedent. There's so many amazing, like a High Road to Hero, like, I mean, there's so many really cool rap rock artists, but it was just that at this moment in time, there's nothing that had existed like this. And we had a lot of help. You know, Devin Townsend co-produced this record.
Wow.
So we got Daniel Bergstrand, who produced the Meshuggah record, who was this, it was a mad scientist of tones. And we brought Devin in because we were super obsessed with the same kind of industrial stuff that he was doing with strapping, that these guys were doing, that D-Manufacture was doing. Like, I really wanted to incorporate that, and Devin at the time was not Devin that we know now. Devin was a hardworking, just coming up. He was signed to Century Media, which Stuck MOJO was as well. Mm-hmm. And Borivor Kurgan, who runs Blabbermouth, was our A&R guy. It was also Devin's.
Borivor was your A&R guy?
He's the one who signed us. Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, Borivor signed us. So every time you're on Blabbermouth, just tell him thank you from me, because he started my career. So, but long story short was, I had Devin Townsend and Daniel Bergstrand in a room with me for a month. You know, two geniuses, and then the four knuckleheads from Atlanta, and who grew up on ZZ Top and AC/DC and Metallica, and it was great having those six guys. Like I said, so that it doesn't sound too self-serving, if Devin Townsend hadn't been there, this record wouldn't sound this way. It really was like a team, and it was like having two coaches that you brought in from different universes who just saw the world differently. Mm-hmm. And every night just sitting there, like, learning from these guys and their experiences and doing what we did best as a band. And this is a band that came off doing 250 shows a year. We did a full U.S. tour with Machine Head, where we shared a bus. So I was roommates with those guys and learned a lot from them, and Flynn, obviously, and we had done...
That's when I first saw you guys open up
Machine
Head.
In El Paso.
I saw it in Tucson.
Oh, Tucson.
Yeah, Southwest, yeah.
There was desert. But yeah, so again, this record changed my life too, because if it wasn't for this record, you know, I wouldn't still be doing what I'm doing.
Mental meltdown. Oh, only the strong survived. Only the strong survived. Violated, Downbreeding, The Monster, Twisted. Great songs.
Yeah, and it was crazy. This was a great time in music, right? The mid-90s. Well, I think that's why this was such a great conversation, because even though I talked to Andy Sneap on the way here, not to name drop, but he produced our next record, Rising, and of course now he plays guitar for Judas Priest. And I was saying, hey man, give me some insight on Metallica and this kind of stuff. He's like, I hated the 90s, because he's a thrash guy. Like, so all his influences are late 80s, and the whole 90s to him was just an abomination, because even though he produced Nevermore, and even though he was producing really interesting bands like Skin Lab, and he went on to produce 2 Megadeth records and the new Priest record, I think part of him is that there's a sense that the 90s was this weird place where, for thrash guys, that all the thrash bands had to stop thrashing. Even Rob Flynn's cutting his hair. You know what I mean? Like, there was this huge wave, and it all came from a lot of these bands. They were so influential. And these guys were the only guys that were really keeping us on course. Yep. Right? I mean, because there were so many influences, like the Deftones and Korn. It was more than music. It was a cultural phenomenon. They really were making, you know, when Chino came out in Dockers, like, no guy in a band is allowed to wear Dockers. You know what I mean? And that's what I think I loved about it. It was bringing skate culture into heavy metal, and it was taking all these interesting things that we all grew up with And all of a sudden, these 80s kids now had bands and were expressing themselves based on their generation of influences. And I thought it was really interesting to hear him say that, because for me, the 90s was great. Like, there were so many great things. But
that was 90s. Yeah, 90s is everything. Pantera.
Me too.
For me is.
Yeah, me too.
90s.
even Testament was
White
making
Zombie,
amazing
too.
records.
Testament.
The Gathering is, like, to me, one of their best records.
I love Demonic. I
Demonic,
love when he got super heavy. A lot of these bands, we can talk forever, but yeah. there's some 90s, I just think Pantera. And
they kind of kept metal alive, right?
Yeah.
Well, why do you think Testament did Demonic?
Yeah.
And it was Pantera. They were literally a gravitational force that was pulling everyone their way. Because
slow it down a little bit.
Yes.
Make it heavy. Yeah.
Get Gene Hoglan to come in and track those drums. We toured
Gene.
with them on that tour, Demonic tour.
But dude, guys, I'm glad you guys came over.
Yeah,
Jose,
that was cool, man.
Rich,
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks, Scott.
It's always
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Again, man.
Good
Thank you,
conversation
guys.
when it involves
90s metal.
Yes, sir.